Hello one and all, Jasper here, and as usual, I was wasting my life watching stuff online when I came across a small channel called The HUD Does. I made a post about this video, but it's only natural to give him a shout out in the video as well, since I'm stealing his idea. He made a video talking about recasting Lord of the Rings with Muppets, and I want to do the same thing with Game of Thrones, which, dare I say, is far, far more likely. Now you might be wondering, how could it be more likely? Well, unlike Lord of the Rings, the Muppets have already had a crossover with Game of Thrones. Not just a parody, but an actual, legit crossover. Look, here it is. That is motherfucking Elmo being the moderator between Cersei and Tyrion, and doing a good job. Only Elmo could make these two work together. Throw on top that George R.R. Martin has already made references to the Muppets in the books with Elmo, Grover, and Kermit Tully in the Fire and Blood books. Did Tolkien ever reference the Muppets like this? No the fuck he didn't. Point 1 for George. So, because of that, why not a massive 8-movie or season series of the Muppets telling the same story, though slightly sanitized? Or fuck it, not sanitized at all. Maybe we can have Peter Jackson come in to direct and he can recreate the masterpiece of Meet the Feebles. Now, in preparation for this video, I did some research by rewatching the 3 Muppet movies which adapted other works, that being Treasure Island, Christmas Carol, and Oz, and ignoring the last one cause good God was that bad. Treasure Island and Christmas Carol, however, are peak. But there is something very important we need to talk about, probably the most important thing. Who gets to stay human? Both of the good movies have a decent balance of actual actors to Muppets, but what is the important thing to figure out is which characters benefit from being the original and which ones can be changed. In all 3 cases, the protagonists remained human, so who counts as the protagonist? At first I felt like any POV character from the books would be a good choice, but that gives us quite a lot. Eddard, Jon, Dany, Cersei, Jaime, Tyrion, Catelyn, Sansa, Arya, Barristan, Sam, and plenty of others, so clearly we need to limit our options. Maybe it would be best to work backwards. Take some Muppets and cast them, and then who isn't cast remains human. Sounds messy, but meh, if it doesn't work I can just change the script and try again later. And let's start with the face of the franchise, Kermit the Frog. Now, I think many of your gut reactions would be characters like Eddard Stark, Jon Snow, and other more heroic and good characters, cause we can't picture Kermit the Frog being anything less than the second coming of Christ in green, webbed, fluffy form. But nay nay nay, I think the actual best choice for Kermit is someone with a bit more pepper in them, and my choice is Jaime Lannister. Now, I will admit, my motivation in this choice is less so Kermit being the perfect choice for the Lion of Lannister, but more so because of his significant other, Miss Piggy. Oh yes, we're going there. Miss Piggy would legit be the perfect casting for Cersei Lannister. Look me in the eyes and tell me I'm wrong. Greedy, ambitious, willful, impatient, quick-tempered, and I could keep going on, but I think you get my point that these two are legit identical in characterization, and if Miss Piggy is Cersei, then Kermit pretty much has to be Jaime, though Cersei isn't the only option for Miss Piggy. Another which only continues to entrench my opinion that Kermit needs to be Jaime Lannister is the character of Brienne of Tarth. While not as perfect as Cersei, there are some aspects of Brienne that Miss Piggy would fit very well with, not just the simple fact of both characters being women who kick major ass. I don't know which one I prefer, Miss Piggy just seems so perfect to be Cersei, but if we went with Brienne, then we could keep Cersei as a human actor, and I just find it hilarious to imagine Bran climbing the tower to find Kermit giving it to Lena Headey. Just imagine Kermit behind her, clapping those cheeks with his arm flailing in the background as he goes, "Yay!" Well, that's already 2 of the most famous Muppets taken care of, so now it's time for the 3rd, good old Fozzie Bear, and I can't think of anything better than Jorah Mormont. Is it a bit lazy to cast the bear Muppet as the guy from Bear Island? Yes. But I think Fozzie can find an interesting middle ground between the charming character of the show and the creepy pedo of the books. That's 3 of the most famous Muppets, which actually kind of a lie. Because you see, there is a Muppet that is arguably more famous than all of them, and that is Cookie Monster. Look, I'll be honest, I don't know if legally the characters of Sesame Street are Muppets, but hey, they were all created by Jim Henson, so I will let it slide. Only Sesame Street characters though. Don't expect me to grab characters from Fraggle Rocks, alright? Anyways, Cookie Monster. And I had to go with my gut here. The first person who came to my mind was legit Sandor Clegane. I don't know why, but it just feels right to me. If we were fine with characters who don't last as long, then maybe Robert Baratheon. Matt had an appetite and I'm sure would enjoy a cookie or two, but let's be real here. Replacing Sandor with Cookie Monster, then having the chicken scene, but replacing the chickens with cookies. Come on, is that not genius? Let's stick around in Sesame Street though and talk about its mascot, Big Bird. And I know exactly who you're thinking, and it's a pretty good idea. Of course Big Bird should portray Gregor Clegane. Imagine Big Bird just taking Pedro Pascal's head and cracking it open like an egg. But no. As great of an idea as that is, I already have plans for Gregor. So instead, we should look to another giant, a more gentle one, Hodor. I could see Big Bird being a great Hodor. Of course, we might give Big Bird a few more lines to work with instead of Ho and Dor, but I think he really has the feeling of the character down. He was already mentioned earlier in this video, so of course we have to find a place with Elmo, which is quite difficult. I'm leaning closer to young childlike characters, and that doesn't leave me with a lot of options. Joffrey is much too evil. I would never put Elmo in those shoes. Never, ever, ever. Bran isn't a bad choice, and having a bit of emotion in that character's three-eyed raven phase would be a massive improvement, but I honestly think a more fitting character is Tommen, a naive but kind boy who just wants to do what he thinks is right. And don't worry about the ending. I think Elmo would just bounce. Let's drag Gonzo in now, and hey, while we're at it, Rizzo the Rat. I don't know if it's just because of Treasure Island and Christmas Carol kept the two connected at the hip, but I find it difficult to separate them. So I thought you have to go with duos, and some obvious duos are Jon and Sam, Arya and Sandor, but the more I thought about it, I have to say, Tyrion and Bronn I think is the best one. I think it fits surprisingly well, and I would love to see Charles Dance give his monologue to a rat. Shit would be hilarious. Oh, and Tywin is a character that must, I repeat, must remain human. I refuse to cast him as any Muppet. Bring back Charles Dance. Animal has always been a personal favorite of mine, but the question is, do I cast Animal on his own, or do I keep him with his fellow bandmates who everyone cares about significantly less? Dr. Teeth, Floyd Pepper, Janice, Zoot, and Lips. And I gotta say, the sad thing is, I think it's best to cast Animal on his own. But Animal is a character that is best done in small doses. So it has to be a character that's not super prominent and won't stay with us forever. And I gotta say, Khal Drogo seems like the perfect pick. First off, Animal's already a bit difficult to understand, so casting him as Khal Drogo and imagine him giving him that speech about tearing down Westeros castles, perfect. As for the rest of his bandmates, obviously they're going to be a band, and of course they have to be in the Red Wedding. I want to see Dr. Teeth be the one to drive a dagger into the belly of Talisa Stark, and Janice can slit the throat of Catelyn Stark. Lips is the most useless member of the band, so just having him go nuts with the crossbow Rambo style? Ha, perfect. And of course, they can also perform at the Purple Wedding. You know, as mentioned before, there are 3 characters in A Song of Ice and Fire that are referenced to the Muppets. We already got Kermit, but Grover and Oscar have yet to be fit in. Grover I'm feeling lazy with and want to cast him as Balon Greyjoy. Why? Well, in a Sesame Street parody, Grover was the titular character, and they called him Grover Bluejoy. So I'm sticking with it. Side fact, because of this, it makes me want to cast all of the Greyjoys with blue Muppets, and make them Bluejoys. We can have Cookie Monster be Victarion, Sam the Eagle as Euron, Gonzo as Theon, and when he gets tortured by Ramses, he gets his nose cut off. We can keep Asha or Yara in the show human. Jokes aside though, Grover as Balon I think works well because Grover is exceptionally stupid. And of all the Muppets to turn down the lucrative deal of working with Robb Stark to become king, Grover makes the most sense. Now Oscar, and I don't know why, but Varys seems like the most fun to me. He would be the spy master, and rather than having a bunch of kids doing his work, I picture Oscar just happening to be in a trash can that was close by 2 characters talking about their plans in the perfect location. Maybe it's like the city of garbage is all interconnected and he's able to travel through it. I don't know, I feel like I remember seeing that in a Sesame Street episode. Should I look up the lore of Sesame Street? Dr. Bunsen and Beaker are pretty recognizable duos, but I don't think a duo would be the best option for them. And actually they should both take the role of a singular character, that being Qyburn. Of course, the mad scientist and his assistant would be perfect for the only mad scientist character in the series. Another duo, wow, there's actually a lot of duos. Anyways, another duo that people would recognize in a heartbeat is Bert and Ernie. So they need to take over a duo as well. And the last one we really have is John and Sam. Bert would of course be John because he is much closer to an emo twink than Bert. Plus, Ernie is obviously fatter than Bert, so he would be a better choice for Sam. Now, having watched the Muppets Oz movie, I came to realize just how much I hate Pepe, the prawn. He is a creepy, disgusting creature who only ever seems to have one thing on his mind: the ladies. So who else has a strong motivation related to women rejecting him? Peter Baelish. Come on, if Pepe was allowed to do it, I could see this guy running a brothel and striking out with every single woman he employs. Now, I jokingly class Sam the Eagle as urine, but obviously that wouldn't work. But you know who would work? Barristan Selmy. He kicks major ass in Muppet Treasure Island. Dude deserves to be a member of the Kingsguard. Oh jeez, we're not even close to running out of characters. And yeah, I'm not going to cast every single Muppet. That's over 1,000 characters, and nobody watching this gives two shits on who I think Mr. Poodlepants or Blotch or Thor or George Washington should be. These Muppet characters can just be random ass extras, okay? Actually, speaking of random extras, there's some Muppets that I should probably bring up that I think are impossible to cast because they're the Muppet. Even when they're in other productions, they are that Muppet. For example, Stutler and Waldorf. They have to be Stutler and Waldorf. Nobody else. Scooter is Scooter. Swedish Chef is Swedish Chef. I mention these characters because I know they're pretty iconic, and of course people would be curious about them. Well, except Scooter. I know he is a pretty prominent character, but who the fuck actually cares about Scooter? Alrighty, let's rapid fire through a few more Muppet characters, and I'll go with my gut reaction on each one. Rolf the dog. He would play 5 different parts, all of the direwolves. Bobo the bear, Gior Mormont, and you all know why. Camilla, Lady Stokeworth so she could still ride Gonzo's nose. Crazy Harry, well with a name like that, Ramsay Bolton seems perfect. Uncle Deadly, I'll be real, I'm getting Walder Frey vibes from him. Link Hogthrob, Mace Tyrell. Clifford, bro was born to be Dario. Count Von Count. Roose Bolton. Rosita, the dude Ed Sheeran played. Telly Monster. Fucker's entire gimmick is liking triangles. What do I do with that? Fuck it, Rob Stark. Abby Kadabi. It ain't great, but she gets Arya, and Zoe can be Sansa. Lou Zealand would be a fantastic patch face, but since we're stuck with show-only characters, let's give him Stannis. It just feels right. And with that, I've saved my favorite casting, the most perfect casting, for last. When I decided to steal this idea, this Muppet was the first to come to my mind, and the first character for him was perfect. The Muppet is Sweetums, and the character he would portray is Gregor Clegane. But there you have it. That's mostly what the casting of Game of Thrones would be if we brought in Muppet actors. What do you think? Did I do a good job, or would you love one of the characters to be placed somewhere else? Was there a particular Muppet that I missed? Do you desperately want to know who I would cast Arnie the alligator as? Helen Reed, if you're wondering. Well, make sure to comment that all down below, and until next time, be safe, and I hope you all have a wonderful night.